In 1995, an aerospace engineer named Christopher Dunn climbed inside a granite box 60 feet beneath the Egyptian desert. He pressed a precision straightedge, calibrated to 2/10,000ths of an inch, against the interior wall and aimed a flashlight behind it. No light passed through. He measured the corners with a precision square calibrated to 5/100,000ths of an inch, 90 degrees, both sides. The interior surfaces were not only flat, they were parallel to each other across a span of 10 feet and square to a lid weighing 30 tons. The box he was standing inside weighed more than 100 tons. It was one of 24. Each had been cut from a single block of rose granite quarried at Aswan, 800 kilometers south. Each had been lowered into a niche carved from limestone bedrock through tunnels barely wider than the box itself. The official explanation for these objects is that they are coffins for sacred bulls. Not a single bull has ever been found inside one. Dunn published his findings. That was 30 years ago. No academic institution has replicated his measurements. No peer-reviewed study using modern metrology, laser scanning, coordinate measurement, photogrammetry has been published on the full set of boxes.
What follows is an investigation not into what these boxes are, but into why, after 170 years, no one has been permitted to answer that question properly. You descend. The air shifts, warmer than expected, dry, completely still. The tunnel narrows. Rough-cut limestone walls press closer, and you can see the marks where ancient tools bit into the rock. Then a niche opens to your right, and the granite appears. Dark rose, almost black in the low light. The surface catches the beam of your flashlight and throws it back at you. The box fills the niche, a foot of clearance on each side. The lid sits slightly ajar, shifted slightly off-center long ago. You reach the rim. You look down. The interior is a perfect rectangular cavity. No tool marks, no seams, no imperfections visible to the naked eye. The walls reflect your light like dark glass. 4 meters long, 2.3 meters wide, 3.3 meters tall. This is not a coffin. This is a precision-engineered chamber, carved from a material harder than the tools the builders supposedly used, and installed in a space that should not have been able to receive it. The explanation deserves to be heard at full strength.
For more than 3,000 years, the Apis bull was one of the most sacred animals in Egypt. A living incarnation of Ptah, the god of creation and craftsmanship, worshipped at Memphis. When an Apis bull died, it was mummified with the same reverence given to a pharaoh and buried with ceremony in the necropolis at Saqqara. The cult dates to at least the reign of Amenhotep III in the 14th century BCE. Prince Khaimwaset, son of Ramesses II, formalized the burial galleries in the 13th century. By the time of Psamtik I, around 664 BCE, the underground complex had expanded into what we now call the Greater Vaults, 350 meters of tunnels with side chambers cut into the bedrock, each one designed to hold a massive sarcophagus. 60 Apis bulls are attested across 1,400 years of burials. The cult was real. The devotion was documented. The stelae naming the bulls and the pharaohs who interred them are still legible. That is the official frame. It is well sourced, archaeologically supported, and widely accepted. And it does not explain the boxes. The problem is not theological. It is mechanical.
Granite registers 6.5 on the Mohs hardness scale. Copper, the hardest tool material attributed to the builders, registers 3. You cannot cut a material rated 6.5 with a tool rated 3. You can abrade it slowly using sand as an intermediary. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated this process. The results are rough, imprecise, and agonizingly slow. The interiors of these boxes are not rough. They are not imprecise. Dunn's measurements found flatness within thousandths of an inch, maintained across surfaces 5 and 10 feet apart. The corners have radii of 4 millimeters. A pencil fits snugly inside them. There is no aesthetic reason for that precision. A radius of 600 millimeters would have looked identical to the human eye. Someone chose to cut granite to tolerances that serve no decorative purpose, using techniques that no one in the field has been able to replicate with the attributed toolkit. When Dunn asked a modern fabrication company whether they could produce one of these boxes from a single block of granite, they told him they could not. They would need 6 separate pieces. That claim is Dunn's account, not a published engineering study. And that distinction matters because no one has published a study that contradicts it either. The physical paradox extends beyond the cutting.
The main entrance to the Serapeum is 3.2 meters wide. The boxes are 2.3 meters wide. That leaves roughly 2 feet of clearance total. Moving a 70-ton object through a tunnel with 2 feet of margin in total darkness underground without powered machinery would require hundreds of workers who could not physically fit in the corridor beside the object they were supposedly pulling. One box sits abandoned in the tunnel itself, unfinished. It never reached its niche. Work stopped mid-process, and no one recorded why. The box remains where it was left, frozen in a moment that eliminates the comfortable assumption that installation was routine. Scholars have proposed sledges, water lubrication, and incremental levering. Each hypothesis addresses some portion of the physics. None addresses all of it, and none has been tested at the actual weights and tunnel dimensions involved. There is a reason the greater vault sarcophagi were empty when Auguste Mariette found them. In the 4th century CE, as Christianity consolidated its authority across Egypt, the animal cults were targeted for destruction. The Apis stelae bear the evidence. Names of bulls systematically scratched out, stones piled on the sarcophagi in deliberate contempt. The bull mummies were torn apart. Whatever the boxes once held was destroyed or scattered by people who considered the contents an abomination. This matters for one reason. The absence of bulls inside the boxes is not proof they were never used for bulls. It is proof that certainty about their contents was made permanently impossible by religious violence 17 centuries ago. The looting did not answer the question. It killed the question. The man who found the boxes fared no better than their contents. Auguste Mariette arrived in Egypt in 1850. He had been sent by the Louvre to buy Coptic manuscripts. He failed. Desperate to avoid returning to Paris empty-handed, he wandered into the Saqqara desert and noticed the head of a sphinx protruding from the sand. He hired 30 workers without authorization and followed the buried avenue until it led him underground. On November 12, 1851, Mariette used explosives to breach the sealed entrance to the greater vaults. He spent 4 years inside. He documented everything. He filled a diary with observations, measurements, drawings. He shipped thousands of artifacts to the Louvre. And then the record began to fracture. A colleague named Eugene Grébeau borrowed Mariette's excavation diary. He never returned it. In 1878, a flood struck the Museum of Egyptian Antiquities at Boulak and destroyed Mariette's supplementary notes. Gaston Maspero salvaged what he could and published a single volume, one volume, of Le Serapeum de Memphis in 1882.
Mariette was dead by then. He died in January 1881 at the age of 59. The most comprehensive first-person record of the Serapeum's discovery was fragmented before it could be fully studied. These are measurements, not theories. Everything that follows is about what happened to the institution that inherited the questions Mariette left behind. In 1992, an earthquake struck Cairo. Cracks appeared in the Serapeum tunnel walls. The site was closed to the public. It remained closed for 20 years. Conservation and stabilization work ran from 2001 to 2012. When the greater vaults reopened, iron railings had been installed. Electric lights replaced the candles, and tourist flow was managed through controlled access points. The boxes sat where they had sat for 26 centuries, untouched, unmeasured by any instrument more sophisticated than the tools Dunn carried in a backpack during public visiting hours. The lesser vaults, the older galleries, commissioned by Chaim Weset in the 13th century BCE, are another matter. Mariette left tens of meters unexplored because the ceiling was collapsing. In the mid-1980s, an archaeologist named Mohammed Ibrahim Ali attempted to resume excavation. He abandoned the effort when the structural danger became untenable.
In 2020, a mission began to stabilize the bedrock above the lesser vaults. The stated purpose is preservation, removing accumulated sand, reinforcing the limestone, preventing further collapse. The unstated fact is simpler. After 170 years, someone is preparing the ground above chambers that no living person has fully entered. No peer-reviewed metrology study has been announced. No independent research team has been granted access to measure the full internal geometry of all 24 boxes using modern instruments. The site sits within a UNESCO World Heritage Buffer Zone. The Supreme Council of Antiquities controls permits. 1700 years ago, the Roman-era writer Arnobius noted that the Egyptians punished anyone who revealed the locations where the apis lay hidden. The secrecy impulse surrounding this site is not modern. It is older than Christianity's presence in Egypt.
This is not a conspiracy. It is a documented pattern of institutional behavior. Lost records, structural closures, controlled permits, restricted access, that produces the same outcome as concealment. The boxes remain, the questions remain, the measurements remain unpublished.
You are back inside the vault. The granite is in front of you, dark rose, mirror polished, older than Rome. The air does not move. The only sound is your own breathing and the faint resonance the stone returns to you when you speak. The boxes are not the mystery. They have been here for 2,600 years. They are not going anywhere. The mystery is the silence. After 170 years, after a lost diary that was borrowed and never returned, after a flood that destroyed the backup, after an earthquake that closed the site for 2 decades, after a conservation mandate that stabilized the tunnels but measured nothing, after a heritage designation that controls who enters and what instruments they carry. After all of that, no one has been permitted to answer the simplest question about these objects. How precisely were they made? Measure them. Publish the data. Let the evidence speak. Unless the answer is the problem. If investigations like this one belong in your week, the bell is there for that reason.